Hey, what's going on, folks? It's Mike here, and welcome to the next lesson in the SDL programming series. In this lesson, I'm going to be talking about bitmap fonts. So this is going to be a way or a technique to draw text to the screen. So we'll go ahead and do a little bit of a live code and show you how this works. Now, previously, if you've seen some of my videos, we have had text on the screen. So if you've searched my name and perhaps the TTF or TrueType fonts library, you've seen this video where we build some dynamic text. But the difference with what we're going to be doing today with Bitmap Fonts is that we're going to be creating the font from scratch. And here's the sort of advantage or the pros and the cons of Bitmap Fonts. In fact, let's go ahead and go to the whiteboard and list them out here, just so we understand what we're doing and if it's worthwhile for you to implement this technique. So as far as Bitmap Fonts go, let's go ahead and just label them out here. Bitmap Font. The idea is that we're going to take some font, and that's some character set, and I'll go ahead and just label out like here, and basically tile all the characters in some way. Could be a flat line, could be a grid, right? We could have multiple dimensions to this if we want here with different numbers and so on. The point is it doesn't really matter as long as we basically treat this like a tile map, which if you've been following my previous series, hopefully it makes sense in how you can break up a world into different tiles. We could do the same thing with a bitmap font. But the advantage here of what we're going to do here, I'll sort of draw a plus sign here, is there is no dependency on SDL TTF. And I'm a huge fan of this because not that SDL TTF is too hard to set up, but limiting dependencies is generally a good idea in software development. That means if they make an update, it could break something in your code if you're updating your system and so on. So in this sense that we're really in control, we're just going to set up these pixels in basically a tile map, but for bitmap fonts, and then render those to texture. That's the idea. Now, the downside is, though, with this technique here is we need to do the work. So we need to do work. And I'll actually label that as sort of a plus/minus. We shouldn't be afraid to do some work here. You know, we do have to manage the system here. But the other sort of negative is the resolution here. So what that means is whatever the size of this bitmap font is that we make here, maybe these are, say, let's give a dimension to this, 32 pixels by, 16 pixels or so. If we scale this up, or if you release a game 10 years later, well, this is sort of your maximum resolution. Now you can always mitigate this by recreating the fonts at a higher resolution, but there is some work to do there. So the resolution does not scale. Versus if we set up our alphabet or characters using more vector-based ways of drawing fonts. In fact, there's lots of libraries that do this kind of stuff, but TTF fonts are basically a series of glyphs, as they're called, which are basically just commands to draw lines and curves to represent the characters that we see above. Instead, again, what we're going to do is just represent everything as pixels, and that's the idea. But that also sort of brings another plus here in the sense that there's no limit to our creativity. Meaning if I want the letter A to be in yellow and B to be in blue and C to be in red, etc., I can basically do whatever I want as long as I can represent that as a pixel value. That could be difficult to do with some mathematical representation, or if I want squiggly lines or animations or different types of things here. And I'll go ahead and just list some of those explicitly. So like if you want an animation, different, patterns within the letters here, some of them are represented with dotted lines or something. It's a little bit easier to just do that here. I'm not going to say it's impossible to do it in a vector-based or TrueType font. It's probably just more work or something that you'd end up having to build. So hopefully you understand the idea here. Now let's just go ahead and get to creating a bitmap font. So what I'm going to do here is actually just create a new font here. And we sort of have to decide what characters we want to represent here. I'm going to just represent the alphabet, ABC, A through Z, I should say. So 26 different characters here. So let's go ahead and figure out how to set this up here. So I've got my calculator here. So we have 26 different characters that I'm going to represent. I'm not even going to represent spaces, and if you want, you can. And we have to decide how big the pixels are going to be, meaning the width. So let's say 32 by 32 is reasonable here. So that's going to be 832 pixels wide, 832. And how many pixels high? Well, again, 32. So let's go ahead and create that here. Okay, so here we have our scene set up here. So let's go ahead and set the background to white for now. I'm gonna go ahead and just flood fill this. There we go. And now what I want to do here is actually create a grid here. Now you might not actually want to do this, but this is going to help us create the actual font that we want here. So let's see. So somewhere I want to do like a tiling here. Let's go ahead and see. Oops, let's see here. You can go to, if you're doing this in GIMP, or you can do this in really any paint program here, but again, I like to use GNU's GIMP because it's free. Just need to find render, pattern. Here we go. Grid here. The width 32, height 32. Color, let's just go ahead and make it black here so I can immediately see the guidelines here, and we'll go ahead and paste that in here. Now again, we might want to make this actually offset a little bit here. Like I could scooch it back one here, or offset the Y, and this should do the trick here well enough for us. Let's go ahead and just zoom in so we can see a little bit of what we've made here. And basically what I'm going to do here is just write in my alphabetic characters here. So let's go ahead and just create a font here. I'll choose a color. Let's make the characters something that'll sort of stand out but not hurt our eyes. So maybe let's just make them kind of grayish or something like that is fine. And let's go ahead and put in our characters here. So if I put in letter A, let's see, I've got to resize my text here. And we'll see I have A here. Now I'm going to just type out the alphabet, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Okay, so there we go. Let's stretch this out, see if I made any mistakes. And of course you can see that, this isn't fitting our grid very nicely. So we might have to resize things a little bit here. Now, of course, you could manually create these characters. I want to line them up as best as I can. I'm going to choose some sort of monospace font here. Typically, monospace fonts are equally laid out, so they kind of, pack together nicely here. And let's make them a little bit taller here, something of this nature. And I'm going to just widen out the space between the characters here. Okay, if I do this properly here, let's see if this fits here. I might have to zoom out just a little bit here. We want to fit the whole thing here. Let's make sure our text falls all the way here. And of course, you could probably download some different fonts here yourself, some bitmap fonts here. So this isn't going to be exactly perfect, but I think it's going to be close enough here. Now, did I forget the letter Z here? W, X, Y, and Z. Okay, let's see here. Let's just stretch this out just a little bit more there. There we go. And that's lining up pretty well here. Let's go ahead, just offset this just a little bit more, maybe 15. Let's see if that does the trick here. Basically, I just want to look and see that they fit in the boxes nice enough for the purpose of our debugging here. Yeah, that's okay here. Let's see. And they're a little bit off because I did draw the grid line here. Let's see if we can do better here. Maybe there's a better monospace font here. And let's actually make these even size here, 28. There we go. That might do just a little bit better here. And let's see. There's no science to this, but let's see if we have any other monospace fonts here. If we make them bold, that might space them out a little bit nicer here. Yeah, 15.5 is about right here. Okay, so roughly I see one character per box, and that'll do the trick here. Okay, it's not perfect. Your Z's cut off a little bit, but we'll work on that. So anyways, let's go ahead and just export this out here. And I'm just going to navigate to this folder here. I'm just going to call this font. And it's important that I make this a BMP because that's what SDL has available. Again, you can use any format. This is just literally the format that we're going to store pixels in, as long as you can get that format into a texture in SDL. So I'm just going to use, for this purpose, a bitmap image here. Okay, so now that we've got that settled here, in our 832 pixels here of character data, let's go ahead and look at our Bitmap Fonts program. Again, just a pretty bare bones. Here's our font, our main program here. It's going to look pretty similar if you've been watching the other SDL videos in this series. We create a window, set up the video system here. We need a render. I'm going to set this up for VSync and hardware accelerated. We don't necessarily need this. We'll talk about the color key and so on in a moment here, but we'll need our texture that we're going to create from this font here. And then we'll have our surface, a render, a rectangle in which we'll draw things, and we'll talk about that. And then we'll go ahead and present it to the screen. And then we've got our cleanup here. Okay, so now that that's sort of settled here, let's go ahead and compile this and see what we have on the screen here. Let's see, let's copy that here. And I'm just on Linux, so we'll go ahead and build that. Let's go ahead and give this a run here. And we should have our empty window here. Now we'll want to go ahead and display things here. Let's go ahead and just display the font here. And let's see. So we'll have our source rectangle. Let's get those dimensions correct here. 832. And then the height is 32 pixels here. We'll talk about what we're actually going to do with this to create the text here from our font here. But let's just go ahead and otherwise prepare ourselves to show something on the screen here. So I'm going to bring in our SDL help page here. We're going to use render copy here. Let's go ahead to the SDL3 documentation just to, let's actually open this up in another window here. Let's see if anything changed here because we're going to kind of want to get prepared for SDL3. Let's see, render copy. Usually you can just change in the URL, the functions. I guess, let's see, maybe we don't have anything in SDL3 here. Okay, that's fine. Actually, there are some cool things in SDL2 that just, or 3 rather, that are cleaning up the API. But I'll do this in SDL2 since that's what most folks are still using. And then we can advance this. Anyways, now that you know the idea. And let's go ahead and copy this here. So we've got our render, the texture that we're sampling from, and then the source rectangle, which is, again, selecting from the rectangle what we want to do here. And we're just going to display the full thing to start here. And then the destination is where it's the target is, okay? Okay, so let's go ahead and present our texture. Oops, that didn't come out as nice as I wanted. So let's go ahead and undo that. And there we go. Let's paste that back in here. Okay, so our render here is what we've just created at the top here. Let's see, so SDL create render. Here's our render. We've got a surface where we loaded in the font, and then we've got this texture here. We could give it a better name here. Font texture, just for the purpose of this lesson. And that's also going to be what we destroy. This font texture. Oops. Let's see, delete word. There we go. Font texture. There we go. All right, so let's set up this just to display our texture, which, again, if you've been following this series, you're probably comfortable with this. Font texture. Source, we want to display the whole thing. No pointer. And then we just have a rectangle for now. Let's go ahead and just paste that in here, which is the target. I'll give these better names in a moment here. Is this one here. Let's actually name this target here. Rectangle, target. Target, rect here. There we go. Just to keep things a little bit straight for us. All right. We don't really care too much about the compile command. You can watch the earlier videos for that. So target, rectangle. Okay, so let's go ahead and recompile. I'm going to put ampersands here so it'll just build right away. If it runs here, let's see, what did I do here? Oh, it's going to want the address of this because it's expecting a pointer. Let's see, is that true? We've just got this leftover int from a copy paste error here. Let's actually see what the return code is here. 0 on success and a negative error code otherwise. Okay, so we could get the error code and call SDL get error. That's probably a good idea for us to do, but let's just go ahead and present our texture to the screen for now. And if we do this, right, we could see our texture here. Okay, so we've got our characters here, but just like with the tile map, we don't want to display everything. We want to select from this one character at a time here, okay? So let's go ahead and figure out how do we do that. Well, if I'm selecting here, basically I want another rectangle, and I'm going to call this the selection rectangle here. So let's call this select rectangle instead of target rectangle. Oops. Target rectangle, select rectangle. There we go. And the idea is we're just choosing one character at a time here, right? Which is 32 by 32. So a little bit more that we have to keep track of in some sense here. But that's the idea here, right? Just select 32 pixels here, right? And that's the point of this third parameter here in our render copy. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. And just as a little, check yourself exercise here. So if I go ahead and scroll up here just a little bit here, right? If I'm selecting from my font here from position 0, and the Y is always going to be 0, the top left corner, 32 by 32 pixels, well, what letter should I see here? Okay, so let's go ahead and just compile and run this. And if you give yourself a moment to think about that, well, we'll see the letter A stretched out very, very large. Why is it stretched out very large? Well, our target is still 832 pixels wide. Okay, so we don't need to display the whole thing. But now if you give that a rerun here, we see the letter A here. Okay, so our target is where we're displaying things, and our selection is where we are selecting. Okay, so easy enough here. Okay, so now let's actually get to displaying some text here and think about how to do that. Okay, so basically we just need to do the selection process multiple times and then copy part of that character, one character at a time here. Now, this could be problematic in some sense, right? If we go to our pros and cons here, I'm going to just put a question mark here about the performance, okay? Because, we are potentially doing a lot of texture copies, and we might need to do some system here to batch basically all of our draws. I mean, that's essentially what SDL is doing when we're copying and then just displaying once. But there might be more efficient ways to do this that we could think of. But let's just go ahead and get a system working here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here is we want to be able to display text here. I'm going to abstract this just a little bit here. Let's go ahead and put this in its own little class here, or even better, let's do it in a let's do it in a struct here. I'm going to call this Bitmap Text here, and we'll go ahead and have a render function, and we're probably going to need a SDL render. And I'll call that render here. Let's see here. There we go. And let's copy basically all of our setup here that we did for the texture here. I suppose this can go in a constructor of sorts. Let's paste that in here. And this will be called Bitmap Text here. All right, let's make this just a little bit smaller just so you can get some context of what's going on. And let's see here. So as far as stuff that I'll need to live, right, we don't really need this surface. Again, it's not super efficient for us to reload this image every time we have a bitmap font. We probably want a resource manager. But again, just for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to toss it in here. We'll have our texture. That needs to live here, this font texture. So let's initialize that SDL texture, font texture, and then we'll set it once. Okay, and we'll probably want a destructor here. Let's do things properly. Bitmap text, and wherever we had our destroy texture, there it is. Let's go back here, paste that in. No highlight. Okay. Okay, so basically we've set up our texture for our bitmap texture. And then we've got these target and selection rectangles, which are going to be useful for us. Okay. Okay, so what do we want to do with these here? Actually, we probably want our target rectangle. And again, I'm going to rename these things just so you can get an idea of what might be nice for the class here. Display rectangle. I guess that's a little bit more accurate here. I'll run that same command here. There we go. But when we're actually rendering this here, what I'm going to want to do here is let's provide another parameter here. We'll take in a string. We can make this, actually, maybe we just want this to be a const char, some text here. It doesn't really matter here. We just need some sort of text. And basically what I'm going to do is loop through these characters here, look up in an ASCII table what they are, and find the corresponding character in our tile set or our bitmap font. Okay, and then we'll render them one at a time here. Actually, as I change my mind here, string will be easier to use because we can just get the length here. But we will have to add a dependency here. That's okay. C++ has a string library for that purpose. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to work there. So I'm going to say for, we can make this a for each loop. Let's say for each character here that's in text, we basically want to copy it out here, okay, in our render. Now this is going to be the key here, that we're sort of selecting one at a time each of these characters. So we'll have to figure out what the offset is into our bitmap font. Okay, so again, in this bitmap font, right, there's the offset for A is 0, offset for B, right, is 1, offset for C is 2, 3, 4, etc. Right? That's the idea here. And again, you can make your bitmap class or bitmap font class a little bit more resilient by storing things like the width and the height. I know they're 32 for this example. That's good enough, again, just to keep this as minimal as possible. That's fine here. We don't need to recreate the triangle every time, so we'll be a little bit efficient here, I suppose, or the rectangle every time. So anyways, what we'll go ahead and do here is let's figure out the value here. And I want to find basically the ASCII value of a character here, okay? So this is going to be kind of interesting here. Let's for now, actually before we do this, let's assume every character is A here. And what we're going to want to do here is actually in our display rectangle, actually we will need this here. Let's go ahead and set this up here. We will want to basically move over 32 characters, the width here. Okay, so we can make this a, let's just go ahead and, again, I suppose you can parameterize this as you want here. Let's set the display appropriately. I'm just going to say the character count. Okay, let's initialize that to 0. And it's going to be the character count plus plus. Okay, so we want to increment it. And we could get a little bit fancy here, but it's basically 32 times whatever the character count is. I'm going to do the post increment here so that the operation happens after the assignment. Let's see if that causes trouble or bugs. But that's the idea here. Okay, so let's see what bugs we've made so far. And again, let's just create an instance of our BitmapText BT. And then if I do BT render, let's see here with our renderer, and just a couple A's here. Let's see what mistakes we've made here. Okay, not too bad. One at line 22. Let's see here. Oh, I see. In the constructor, I suppose I'll need to, pass in the renderer. That's okay. Okay. Let's see here. Let's go ahead to 102. Okay, so when I construct this, I'll pass in the render. Okay, and segmentation fault. Oh, let's see what we've done here. What have we done? Let's see if we can fix this quickly here. We create our texture. Oh, I've got to assign this font texture. Okay, so now we have something that's not null. And we display AAA here. Okay, so this is working as far as it's displaying somewhere where our bitmap font is. But again, how do I now provide a reasonable string like Mike or something here? Okay, so let's actually test this out again. All right, let's go ahead and say Mike. Now, I only have support here in my bitmap font here for uppercase letters. All right, let's see if I still have it open. There it is. So again, a restriction that you're going to have here is just uppercase letters, which again, for now is fine here. So let's just do MIKE here. But again, if I run this, right, we're still getting AAA here. We should be getting Mike here, okay? So the idea is, let's go ahead and scroll up here, and I'll open up another terminal here to show off this idea, is we have this ASCII table here. And you can look this up on the internet if you don't have the terminal version here. I'm going to go ahead and just do ASCII -D to get the decimal values here. It's a little bit easier to read. We can see the actual value for the letter A is 65, B is 66, C is 67. So if I want to get the letter A here, basically what I need to do here is looking at my bitmap font, right? I need to figure out the character value in my string in my C++ program and get to the 0th value here. So the character value is 65. The decimal value, that's how it's represented in the machine. I simply just subtract 65 from whatever the value is, and that'll give me the 0th tile here. So for B here, I also subtract 65. That gives me index number 1 here. For C, subtract 65, that gives me index number 2 for the C here. So that's the idea here with the ASCII table. That's how I'm going to approach this here. So let's go ahead and basically do that conversion. So now what we're going to do in our selection rectangle here is provide some sort of offset. Okay, so the offset is going to equal, I'm going to cast the value here to a integer here. Now we have different casts we can do here. Let's actually do static cast is a little bit better here to an int than our value here. And then we want to subtract 65. Let's go ahead and see if that just compiles. Make sure I didn't do anything silly. It's a little bit more of a modern way to do things. And then if I print this out here, let's go ahead and see offset. Let's see, we should be getting values like the different ASCII values printing out here. Okay, or rather, since I'm subtracting 65, what these values are 4, 12, and 8. Okay, so if I'm trying to, in 10, print out Mike here, let's take a look here in our font. Well, if I look here, let's see, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and E, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, that's okay. 11, 12 for Mike. Okay, you get the idea here, right? Those are the values that are showing up here, right? When I subtract 65. Okay, so we're selecting the right value here. So the offset is going to be offset times 32. And that should do it here. So if I go ahead and show you here, here is Mike here. So quite nice here. Now, again, as mentioned, the limitation with the little system that I've built here is, well, I don't have spaces. I don't have lowercase characters. So, you know, you can create a more interesting tile set here to meet your needs. Of course, you probably want to fix this as best as you can and not have this changing all the time and, you know, think about the characters you need to represent. But that's the basic idea here. So let's go ahead and just to make this a little bit more functional and interesting here, let's go ahead and add some parameters. So these are going to be the types of things that you want to do here. Provide, you know, the X and the Y position here. And when you're actually displaying this, go ahead and do, X plus and the Y position. And then let's actually go ahead and use this. Let's go ahead and kind of center this to our screen somewhere. I don't know, 50, 100 here. And see if it still works, see if all of our offsets are computed properly. And it is. Okay, so kind of nicely here. Right, we're still offset correctly, and every character that we add here adds to our font appropriately. Now, there are some issues here still, as you might have noticed, right? We've got this white background here, which you may or may not want, depending on your user interface. But we've learned about some of these things here, how to fix them. Again, if you've been watching this series, we can provide a color key here. Okay, so I left that as a comment here from one of the previous lessons here. And again, we perform this on the surface here. So let's see, what color do we want to get rid of here? For now, it's just going to be white, 0xFF. Let's go ahead and give this a run here. And now if I run this, right, we get something that looks like this. Okay, so you can see the transparent pixels here. So this probably isn't quite what we want here. Let's go ahead and fix this. Right, usually what we use here is, let's see, for our pixels here, we are going to pick like 255, 0, 255. Okay. And let's go ahead and do a little flood fill here. Let's make sure we merge down our backgrounds here. And this is, again, the kind of stuff where we have to be a little bit careful. Whoops, with what we're doing here. Let's not fill the whole section here, but, fill in our colors here. Oops, let's actually, let me undo a few of these things. Let's change our background. Let's see here. Just gonna have to spam this here. There we go. And what else we want to do? So we lost our grid lines here. That's okay. I mean, we're pretty sure here, but this is going to become the transparent color here. There are some other enhancements. Let's see. I can anti-alias this. Let's see. I probably want to do this on this layer here. Make the font look just a little bit nicer as far as sharpening our edges. Let's see if that did anything. Now I need to re-export this. Okay, we've made a change here. Let's go into our program. Shouldn't need to recompile. I just changed the text here. But now I've got my text here. Okay, now it is a little bit, we probably want to do a better job here with our actual, let's see if we zoom in here a little bit, 500. There are some lossy pixels in here, it looks like, right around the borders and the edges here. All right. So I probably want to be a little bit more crisp. I mean, the noise that you're getting, like if you look at this O here, see how it has inside some of these pixels are still, it's not very crisp. Let's see if we can run a filter or two here. Now I did run, let's see if I can sharpen this guy here a little bit. Let's see if the anti-aliasing, maybe it didn't run here. Yeah, I created a little bit more noise here. That's okay. The point is, you probably are going to have to be a little bit, careful with how you create these bitmap fonts. But the nice thing is, once they're working here, which this one's working, you get a pretty nice effect here. Now it'll probably show better on a white background here. Let's change our color. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and scroll down. Where's our clear color? Here we go. Let's just make it on a black background here. You get something that looks pretty good here. So you do have to be careful with some of the font sets that you create this from. I mean, this looks pretty crisp, but you can see hints of the pink a little bit here. So again, you probably want to go over this, right? You're probably going to have your artist create this font set, or you can do it, right? Just create something temporary like I did. I showed you how, but a few things to be aware of. All right, folks, so with that said, hope you enjoyed this video. Let me go ahead and scroll through the code one more time just so you can see. And we'll go ahead and make the font a little bit larger. But this gives you an idea of creating your own little text class with fonts, right? And we don't have the dependency of the true type fonts in case that changes or whatever happens, right? So we've got this bitmap class here. You can create a font texture. You can set the transparency if you like. And then we have our destructors and so on. rendering, which we talked about here, creating the offset and selecting each character in our string, and we can display it as we need here. And then if we scroll down here, our main is looking pretty much the same here. We just create our renderer, we have our application loop, and we're just rendering our font as we do our drawing. Now, the last important thing that I'll mention here that's probably super useful is, do our font drawing. And here we draw our object. So usually we're drawing our fonts last so that they overlap on top of the object. So again, if you run into these issues, just something to keep in mind there. Alrighty, folks. With that said, hope you enjoyed this video here. We've got our bitmap font. Not too hard to do with the skills that you've probably previously built as you've been watching along this series. And it's something that you can use to, well, create very beautiful user interfaces with this technique. And again, it doesn't have to be limited to fonts. You can use these for your other UI elements, right? We know about tiling and building trains now. Alrighty, folks, with that said, thank you for your time and attention as always. And if you have questions, comments, I'll look forward to reading the discussion below. And with that said, I'll see you in the next one.